Hi, I'm Matt.
And now I'm Andrew.
Welcome to Waiting with Love. As always, this is a fellowship style space for people navigating the messy in between that comes with waiting. Whether you're waiting for a child, as we are, or waiting for something else, we want you to know that you don't have to wait without hope and you don't have to wait alone.
This is
This is
especially true when that waiting has lasted longer, hurt more, or changed you more than you expected.
If you've ever felt stuck in the middle of something you desperately want, you're in the right place.
Thank you for being here.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much to everybody who's listened, visited our website, and followed along on social media. This week, life didn't pause for us. We had a death in the family. I've had a medical issue, which, for those of you watching on video, can probably see. Don't worry, I'm okay. But at the same time, work emails kept on coming, the laundry still needed to be done, and the world kept moving. And so today we want to talk about what it feels like when life continues, even when part of you wants it to stop or to slow down.
Yes, as Matt said, it's been quite a week. And yes, Matt, you still look wonderful to me as always, and he's getting better every day. We did have a very sad death in the family. But it's interesting, right? Because it is always a delicate balance when you get bad news, go through life's troubles, whether it's fertility related or infertility related, or just like we had the last 2 weeks, which is basically just other life events happening. And you want to stop, pause, reflect, mourn, go through the feelings. But on the other edge of it all, on the other side of it all, the way to kind of proceed is to not ignore what just happened or bad news, but still have to carry on, right? So it's like a very delicate balance between the two. So we have gotten better at that over the 10 years of trying to grow our family. But it definitely did not start there, did it, Matt?
No, it didn't. And I think that by not taking a moment to appropriately name whatever you're going through and to process those feelings, I mean, if I think about the death in the family, everyone knows that part of the cycle when you lose someone you love is grieving and is taking a moment to recognize what is no longer there. And I think when we were early in this journey, we took too much time to not process, which ultimately turned into unhealthy coping mechanisms, some of which we've talked about before. And I think that, when life has to continue, that can feel unfair in some regards, but in some ways it can also feel grounding. And I think that, having a death in the family was actually a pretty good parallel of something to take some time to process and to grieve properly.
Yeah, and I think especially in the old days, so earlier in our journey, um, when we basically you and I, certainly me, I won't speak for you, but certainly me, basically compartmentalized our entire lives into we're just trying to have a baby and nothing else matters. Um, and so every time there was a setback or something bad happened with that, or we were upset, angry about something, we kind of just kept the focus there and had no exterior perspective, and the reality is, again, with Matt's illness and my death in our death in the family, it just makes you remember that, yeah, I mean, the journey for our family does not end, but life goes on. And even though the last week or so was not fun, we did get to spend a lot of time with our family. We did get to be together. We did get to do things that were healthy. And ironically, it distracted that bad news, I guess, started off as sad, obviously, and continued to be sad, but also distracted us. And not to get into specifics because we're not going to go there as discussed, but we actually got quite a bit of decent news the last week or two. That's all we'll say
Yeah.
about that. When it comes to, I'm sorry, when it comes to the fertility stuff. Again, nothing on the horizon or anything like that for those of you who are close who are listening, but we didn't get bad updates. Let me put it that way. We got some decent updates the last few weeks, and they were unexpected, and we were kind of like, oh, how lovely, So by keeping perspective, but I remember there's more to life in the world than your fertility journey, as hard as it is. not only will you feel better in general, but maybe you'll also be open to some surprises you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And as you were talking about that, I started thinking to myself, in some ways, the fact that life continues now that, we're in a better place to be more grounded in life continuing, it's actually a good thing because for a couple of days, although the circumstances weren't great, we were focused on other things and we weren't allowing ourselves to be totally consumed by what is the latest happening with the baby. And in many cases, as you said, we did get some positive news over the past couple of weeks, but the past couple of weeks have actually moved fairly quickly for us because life continued happening. And we've talked about this before on this show. We showed up and we did what we needed to support the family, and you showed up to support me, including in the emergency room, and to support me at home. And that was a positive distraction for us that actually made some of the waiting that we're going through a little more bearable the last couple weeks because life did continue happening.
It's interesting. So, we don't script these shows, but of course, we think about what the topics we want to talk about and we outline. I think something I just thought of that is a differentiator between the old days of us going through this process and today is we used to have almost like an obsession with following this process and being a,
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word addicted because for us and a lot of people that's a loaded word, but like we were obsessed with updates. We were obsessed checking our email. And again, I'm not saying we're perfect. Progress, not perfection, but we're better at that now. And as a result, by not being obsessed over anything, this could be, this could be the news, this could be anything, right? That you just obsess over that. It's good to know what's going on. For us, it's good to have updates on the journey and to know what's going on. But like, you can't be obsessed because number one, life is going to go very slow. Every bit of bad news is going to be the worst thing ever because that's all you're focused on. And by kind of us moving away from that obsession to more healthy hobbies and activities and continuing our life, whether it's this podcast, whether it's showing up for our family over the last week, whether it's go whatever it is, right? It allows you to enjoy your life as best you can while, yes, getting updates as they come in and being pleasantly surprised instead of being obsessed. Because so much of this process, as we discussed, is out of our control. And I think what happens is we think being obsessed with it is like, oh, that'll somehow make things happen, which is ridiculous because it's out of our control, right? So
Yeah. So I want to ask, I mean, I think I know the answer, but maybe for our listeners, and then, you know, maybe I'll answer the same question. When something happens like what we've gone through over the past week or so with a death in the family and my medical issue, what's your first instinct? How does your body immediately respond?
oh, that's a good question. So this is where you and I are very different. I am the fixer. I'm always the fixer, no matter what. That has always been my role. I get it from my mother because she's a fixer on steroids. Um, and so we were actually separated when we got all this bad when we got the
Yeah.
news about this death in the family. I was in Florida visiting my parents. Matt was up here in Maine. I literally got to Florida. I was there for less than 24. I think I was there for like 12 hours when I got there at night. And that following morning, we heard the news about my aunt, our aunt, and I was of course shocked for about 30 seconds. I was on the phone with my mother. My parents are divorced, and I was with my dad for that part of the trip. So my mother called me to tell me, and within 30 seconds, I was upset, shocked, and became fixer for my mother, trying to console her, figuring out, okay, my aunt and uncle live in New Jersey. We need to book flights. We need to get a hotel. I'm also a travel agent, so of course, I'm already thinking that. But like, we need to figure out how we're all getting up there. Matt, are you coming? Like, I started being the logistics coordinator
Yeah.
instead of like, oh my God, my aunt, who's my closest extended family relative, just passed away unexpectedly too. And so
Yeah.
I'm the fixer. I kind of distract myself. I try not to think about it. And then at some point, sometimes even weeks later, it happens and I start breaking down. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, you called me. I was on a work call. I don't know why I felt compelled to answer because typically I ignore your calls when I'm on work calls, but I felt like I needed to answer, and evidently I was right. And as you said, I was here by myself with the dogs, and you jumped immediately into fixer mode, and I did what I do best. I ordered a ton of groceries from Walmart. I texted the dog sitter and told her she needed to be on standby because I needed to get to New Jersey. And I got in and nearly blew up our kitchen in terms of the dishes and the pots and pans. But, you know, your aunt loved to cook, and that was a passion that her and I both shared. And I express myself primarily through cooking for people. And in less than 14 hours, made a ton of food to make sure that the family was going to be fed, and slept a little bit and got up the next morning and hopped in the car and drove down and met you all in New Jersey. Um, but I think where, you and I are a little bit different, and we, of course, know this about each other, is what our breaking down looks like is a little bit different. Once we got back from New Jersey, obviously I had this medical issue while we were there, but after going through the funeral and all the cooking and the travel, I got home and basically spent a week in bed. And part of that, of course, was because of my medical issue, but it was a little bit of a shutdown of, being overstimulated.
Yeah. And for me, again, I always, I try to fix, I try to distract. So we get back, Matt gets settled in bed. I go back to my routine of going to the gym and working and blogging about travel and just trying to just stay busy and not think about, oh my God, in the last literally 3 to 4 days, my aunt passed away. My mother, I mean, we're all upset, but of course, my mother, her sister was the most upset. And, my mother's getting older herself. So I have that anxiety. Matt was sick, and we didn't know right away it wasn't serious, but the symptoms were serious. It was scary. And as the fixer and trying to be the strong one, I didn't want to show that to anybody, so I didn't show that to anybody. Um, and so what I did is how I kind of let it all out. And I'm funny. I don't really cry at hospitals or funerals or things like that. I watch shows that are not sad, but then break down during them. If that makes sense. Like, that's what I did. I watched old episodes of The West Wing. Did any of you all watch The West Wing? It's not really a sad show. It's really actually kind of light and kind of fun. But I just broke down like for 3 episodes straight. I was just crying through most of them, which doesn't make a lot of sense rationally, but that's how I processed because it was quiet. I was able to relax and kind of immerse myself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that, there's pressure to be okay quickly, pressure to show up for other people as, you did with your mom and as I did with cooking. But taking that time to ourselves, whether it was in the moment or more so afterwards, I think is an important way of letting yourself feel whatever life is throwing at you, even though life has to continue to some extent. But I think that ultimately is healthier than what we previously did along this journey, which was to ignore those feelings.
Ignore it and do unhealthy things to ignore them, like to whatever the word is. Yeah,
Yeah. And,
suppress. That's the word.
if
Suppress. That's the word. That's
suppress, yes, good word.
what I
And
was looking for.
if I think back to grief that we've had along this journey, which unfortunately there's been a lot of over the last 10 years, I think the most recent and pretty significant setback that we had was while our exchange student was living with us. And, there was pressure to be okay immediately because we had a 16-year-old to take care of.
And if that 16-year-old is listening right now, we're only calling you the exchange student to hide your identity. So sorry, it's a little, it's a little, not very warm, but that's why we're calling you that. Anyway, yes. So I remember it clearly. We got a really serious setback while our exchange student was here. Um, he was at school. You were on the phone, I think. You were on a conference call. and I got the email
As
with
I
a
so often am.
you notice there's a running theme here wherever Matt's basically always on a conference call. But anyway, I got a call from the surrogacy company, which we talked about in previous episodes. A call is never a good sign. So right away, I'm like, oh, and we were waiting for a good update or the next update, and and I saw the call. I'm like, I'm just gonna say, I was like, fuck, this is not good. And I answered the call. It's exactly what I thought it was going to be. They were great about it though, if they're listening or if they follow us. They handled it as good as you can, unfortunately. But I'm gonna be honest. I this is Matt was a year sober at the time. I was a little nervous this news would make him upset and lead to some bad things, which purely my own anxiety. Matt's done nothing for me to feel that way. That's just but I was worried about that, to be honest with you. And he was on a call, but I was upset. So I'm like, I'm trying to juggle all this. So I go upstairs, I get it together, I tell Matt. Matt handles it well. I think both of us, if I remember correctly, didn't fully process what just happened, and so it gave us a little bit of time to kind of not fall to pieces right away. But as I think you started thinking about it more, the boy gets home from school and we basically have to pretend that we don't have to, but we choose to pretend everything is fine. And at the time, I don't think he even knew we were doing this process or anything like that, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
that's correct.
So yeah, so and again, it sounds bad, but actually, at first it was not. At first, it was definitely pretending we're okay, but then slowly but surely, it clicked. Wait a minute, the boy who we're taking care of this year, who we are parents to this year, not his parents are wonderful. We could never be them, but like just like his American dads while he was here is counting on us to be the support and just a safety net. We had to be okay. Like we could not be like, oh my God, woe is me. We had a serious setback and our life sucked and blah, 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 blah. It's like, oh, how was school today? I think this was the spring. How was baseball? How was, how was US history? That was the class he struggled with the most, even though he still got A's in it. Like it was, and it felt at first like we were trying to hide our feelings, but actually, if anything, it was the most just living in the moment and living life as we possibly could have because I was being genuine. I wasn't like acting. Maybe at first I thought I was acting, but then as you start talking to him, and Matt, as you start talking to him, and if we probably went to Duffy's because it was a Wednesday or did something that we would normally do, we just lived. We just lived, and we go to sleep. We are upset, but we're not devastated, and that's not because we replaced having a baby with a foreign exchange student. It's because um, we continued to live. Of course, we were upset. We were upset for many weeks later. We're still upset about it, honestly, but we continued. And that's why, again, not being obsessed with this process, having other outlets to live, whether, again, it is hosting an exchange student or whatever it is, it kind of keeps you balanced. So you do have your moments of sadness, but life does continue. You have to live. People are counting on you. You're counting on you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that shows kind of how in that moment we both showed up imperfectly, as we all are. We're human beings. We're not perfect. We went out to dinner instead of making dinner because I think you're right. I think we did go to Duffy's. Shout out to our next door neighbor. Uh,
Who we know are listening. So shout out to Duffy's. Love Duffy's. We're not
but
sponsored by Duffy's. Not yet. Hey, Duffy's, give us a call.
but at the same time, that experience brought a shift in perspective, which was healthy for us, which was, to be appreciative of the situation that we had and to be able to show up as parents or pseudo parents and grieve at the same time. It doesn't replace that, but, it helped us to be able to move on a little bit, I think.
Well, and then it also, I know, will make us better parents in the future if this happens, because we're going to get more bad news when we're parents one day about whatever, right? Family members are going to pass away. Things are going to happen in the world. There'll be setbacks in life. People will get sick, right? And there'll be a kid in the house, hopefully. And now we have some muscle memory muscle, whatever the phrase is, muscle memory. I think that's right. Um, to not fall to pieces. Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
us have parents who did fall to pieces and, growing up, but those are images you never forget, even as we get older, right? So I'm hoping we have that muscle memory now.
Yeah, I think It brings me back to a phrase that's often used in the recovery world, which is life on life's terms. You know, people are going to come, people are going to go, and there's going to be setbacks. But I think we have to be able to, in a healthy manner, look at, is this going to fundamentally change my life a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And whether it's a setback in the fertility journey, which, you know, we've had many of, or it's the loss of a family member. Of course, the loss of a family member is devastating and is something sad, and we don't want to have that happen. But at the same time, it does happen. And, you know, we have to be prepared for that. But I think that looking at our fertility journey and all of the times that we thought something was going to happen and it didn't happen, I could name 100 reasons why that wasn't the right time. And I know it sounds cliche of it'll happen when it's meant to happen, but to a certain extent, you know, were we devastated that the twins that we were trying to adopt didn't work out? Of course we were. But so many good things have happened in our lives as a result of not having those twins.
Absolutely.
So I think, you know, for our listeners, if life is moving faster than your heart right now, take a second to think about what would it look like to move at your own pace, even if the world doesn't. And that doesn't mean minimizing your feelings, but
And
we've talked about this. Yeah, go
one thing
ahead.
I do want to add as we begin to wrap up, because I know this is running long. We're not suggesting to pretend otherwise, right? I think that's a big thing too, because I think a lot of us do that, right? We pretend that we're okay when we're not okay. We definitely used to do that. Posting pictures of how wonderful, how happy we are on vacation or whatnot, or
Yeah.
whatever. But what we're saying is, so again, in front of our exchange June, when we got that bad news, we were not pretending. I mean, maybe we were pretending initially for the first minute, pretending that we weren't going through all this more to protect him because he doesn't need to at the time didn't have to worry about this. But really, we weren't pretending. We were trying to show, not trying. We were showing up for a kid who expected us to be his parents while he was here. So that's not pretending. That was doing what was necessary to ensure he was emotionally safe, we were emotionally safe, and continuing life. And even if you don't have an exchange student, that's the same. Nobody's here saying pretend you're happy by playing tennis or going to the gym or playing the guitar, but it's more balancing going through the emotions you need to go through, but also finding ways to continue your life.
Yeah, and that was the point that I was going to make. You know, we've talked before about how hope and grief can coexist, but grief and responsibility can also coexist. This isn't binary one or the other. And I think that's really the message today is if you're going through life and life continues to happen, you need to take the time to process those emotions, and it doesn't minimize anything that you're feeling, and it certainly doesn't minimize, you know, we don't feel like because we took a week to focus on family and to focus on my health, it has in some way minimized our desires on our journey. If anything, it cemented our desires for the outcome of this journey.
I think that's a perfect place to end it, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. If this episode resonates with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to know that they're not alone.
You can find more about us and this community at www.waitingwithlove.com.
And links to our socials, as always, are in the show notes.
Until next time, keep waiting with love.